Hello, welcome back to the value of everything. Now we are going to approach something which is pretty much this thing in life which really nobody wants to tell you much about it, or just probably nobody can be asked or whatever to tell you about this. Maybe there's just people in your life that really haven't accomplished things, or there's just people that want to bring you down. So there's a number of these little weirdness and tangled things which occur, which really prevent you from getting any further, and is in some way a roadblock to you achieving anything good in your life. So let me explain to you one of the little things that I've noticed throughout my time on this planet Earth. Every time I get to a certain stage in my life, I get people that sit around and they all sit together and they go, "You wait till you get to this stage." And I go, "Right, okay." And so, for example, sorry, I just need to stop this rattling from my nuisance bottle. Right. Maybe that should do it. So, yeah, so you get to this point in your time where people will gather around and they go, "You wait till you go to school, then you're going to get a little life lesson to yourself. You wait." So, right, let me just approach that. So, you go to school, you're shit petrified, you get put into a class, you realise you're either the oldest in the class or the youngest in the class. If you're the youngest in your class, then you realise, oh my god, everyone's a lot bigger than me, and you're a little bit in this weird situation. I guess that's probably slightly the daunting thing, but at least it's not the most scariest thing in the world. But it's just that little chuckle that people give to themselves. You wait till you get to that stage in your life. Then it comes to the next point where you go, you wait till you get yourself some homework. You get yourself a little bit of that bitch, and then tell me how you feel. And then you wait till you accomplish it, like high school, or you go to university. I guess in university, people will say, well, you might get a couple of people turning around and go, "Whoa, it's not quite as hard, but you get a little bit more partying and it's a little bit more harder to juggle." You wait, it's a little bit more of a complicated thing to get through there. Then you wait till you get a proper job. You'll realise the nature of reality then. You wait till you get there, and you're going to get a shitstorm of work. You're going to have to work a ridiculous amount of hours. Your body's like used to sleeping all the time, and now you're going to have to really push yourself through. You wait till you get to that point. Then you wait till you get married. You wait till you have kids. You wait till they have grandchildren. It's obviously this little chuckle to somebody does, and it comes back to you, and you're like, "Oh, imagine what happens." Or you wait till you have teenagers, you wait to have this, and really, I've found majority of the time, other than probably, well, what one was the one that was a little bit more of a struggle? Probably the kids one is probably the most demanding one, because not only have you got everything to accomplish at the same time, not only you got to maintain and go to work on a daily basis, lose a lot of sleep that you're not quite used to. I guess everyone can handle a lot of shitstorms that get thrown at them, but exactly when you get your sleep taken away from you at the same time, that's probably one of the bigger struggles. That now I'm doing that to you already, but just in that respect, you just think, but now once you've come through to the other side, I've been over the hill and I'm through it now. It wasn't incredibly bad. It was more so things that was happening on my level that it just seemed like it was quite difficult. And for every stage that I went through, any one of those life points, upon reflection, and rethinking about the situation, I wish I approached the thing more certain than what I was beforehand. Applied myself a little bit more into the way that I thought I would have been right. And I probably would have been. Sometimes I wish I would have stood up in front of the teacher a little bit more in the classroom and really started to throw some questions their way instead of being shy and timid. I really wish I was, I wish I had certain ideas with the way that I was going to be a father, and I still do this to this day, write little lists of how I want to improve myself, and hopefully that improvement of myself is a reflection back upon my son. So there is definitely one point of where you go, okay, yeah, I definitely want to improve this, I want to improve that. And so I don't know what rift I was going to there, but yeah, you get to this point in your life and then you think, okay, well, what was that? What on earth? Where are all those steps? What are all those things which occurred? What are all these the people going through and saying? And I know that I'm guilty of doing this myself. What is this? And it is some kind of roadblock to your own success in your life. And it's interesting how these little things can occur and these things can be built up to seem as if they're ridiculously hard tasks. Really, when you go through it, you're basically on your own at that point. And I guess it's just a little bit of a message of, you wait until you're on your own feet and you're in this situation. You'll see how it's like. I guess like if you were just a freshman into the military and you're sitting around the guys who have been in combat, I guess exactly the same thing would happen there. Upon reflection, probably they would have a totally different perspective, and maybe they would have a certain perspective that they would wish they approached things with a little bit more dead certainty than the fear that was possibly slightly put into them initially by the more sort of chuckling older military men there. So it's definitely interesting. And I guess also another point that you would make as well is once you've achieved or accomplished or gone through that phase in your life, then you just get that little wry smile back and you go, oh, you've been through that now, did you? How was that? And or you just, and all those kind of things. And I guess you give the wry smile back, and it's not necessarily, it's a bit of a weird moment really in life where you just go, oh yeah, I've been through, oh yeah, I know what that was like. But it's, yeah, I mean, but usually what I have done in that situation, I've turned around and said, just because I found a little bit perturbed by that moment, I always say, no, it wasn't that bad. It wasn't really that bad. It was like, upon reflection, I don't know, I think it's just that little kickback I like to do in terms of that situation that was, or that little chuckling that was done back on me. I like to do that little chuckle back at them, just to sort of, I don't know. I guess if there was any kind of underhand little fearmongering going on, I'd like to just sort of swing it back at them. But yeah, it's only just like a tit for tat thing. It's nothing like malicious, but I just like to sort of contemplate and think of things in that method. So we go through roadblocks in our life. There's when I say roadblock, obviously it's not a total roadblock, but it's just maybe more humps in the road which prevents us from sort of really approaching things with dead certainty and real sort of thrust into a situation. Now, not to say that I most of the things that I find in the schooling environment is a little bit problematic. There is certain issues how people have to study the curriculum, which may not be exactly what a certain child would like to study in. Maybe it's not quite the perfect methodology of learning, particularly for boys. More so, obviously, it's been shown to be more beneficial. The current schooling system is more beneficial to girls. I mean, I could be totally wrong, but it does seem that boys are failing on a lot more of a larger level than comparison to girls, which is sort of understandable. But you get there is, with the boys, you do have the various degrees of brilliance and underachievement. You have the top head chefs will usually be the males, and then you also get a lot of ladies chefs out there in the world. Obviously, a slight cultural thing that's happened throughout time is that the lady will be at home to cook and things like that. So yet you do have the majority of good cooks in the world are women, but in general, you find that the top chefs in the world, the celebrity chefs, are males. So you do tend to find that throughout the curve, you do have certain areas of brilliance. Not to say that there are very brilliant women who have achieved to an immense scale, but there is a definite sort of thing where men should really be scattered from both degrees or ends of the spectrum, whereas girls should be reaching a fairly good standard throughout their education. However, it seems like in most school systems that the boys have just been totally taken out, and I guess you do still get that certain levels of brilliance that shine through in a few boys, but in general we seem to find that the boys coming out of the school system don't seem to be achieving to the standards that they were beforehand. So there's a lot of topics to discuss, and I probably could turn this into a whole podcast in itself. But we do look at these. We do look at coming to school and looking things objectively there, and noticing that obviously when you approach a school that you wish you could have applied yourself in a different way. Obviously, another thing that was tricky in a school scenario, I wasn't really directly bullied really too much. There was a definite level of, there was gangs, a major gang in our school, and there was a lot of intimidation which was occurring, and I would avoid certain hallways, just a certain level of avoidance. It wasn't like I was a small guy, but even so, I was a fairly chubby guy, but I wasn't really the smallest guy in the field. But I did have a lot of power to me. So I did actually have a couple of fights in school, because it was quite a violent school that I was in. So wherever I was in a fight, I ensured that they weren't part of this gang where there could have been retribution paid back on me. And when that fight did occur, I tried to make sure that there was a certain element that the fight, intimidation wouldn't occur back on me, by showing that I was willing to give what I can get. So yeah, so there's definitely elements of problems with school and the school structure. I guess there's a lot less violence in school nowadays to the schooling system that I had, and it was a very governmenty, welfare-ish school that I went to. But even so, yeah, it's kind of problematic, and you would also think to yourself that you're thrown into a situation which isn't really done by choice. It's sort of nestled you in there just so that your parents can both get to work. It's not really much of a structure around you as much. And the one fundamental thing about schooling, which is to increase your net value, so you have applicable applicable tools which can be applied into the workforce, so that you can either start your own business, or you could either be of high value to other businesses. That increase of value which a school is meant to do didn't really do anything for me in that sense. So it's interesting how my education was sort of narrowed into just trying to recite things like Romulus and Remus, and reciting things off of some kind of mystical thing of how Rome was built, not actually like the economy or the wars or anything like that, which would have been a little bit more interesting and given me a little bit of idea of social science and things like that. But so we get ourselves to this stage. We find that at all these blocks, we get thrown into a system. We kind of dislike this system, and we look back and we reflect at this system, and we go, I wish I approached things with a lot more confidence. I wish I would have kicked ass a little bit better. I wish I was probably a little bit more rebellious at school, to be honest. I probably was too complicit in the way that I was approaching school. I wish I could have definitely. There was one moment actually in school. Probably not exactly a moment of incredible sort of bravery, and where I've really stood up to a teacher. It's probably a lot of what a lot of school kids probably do today, but it was pretty tough in the arena. I think there was just some kind of gymnastic thing, and there was this new teacher that arrived, and he was very, very pushy on the kids, and he was going, right, let's just jump over this, jump over that, and obviously me being a chubby guy, I just didn't really want to do it, and it was going to be a failure, whatever I was trying to do or jump over. And I did say to him, look, I don't want to do this. And he was going, come on, like that, and he was just going a little bit too more on the hasty side. Fortunately, I didn't sort of bow down to what he was his needs were, but I did what I wanted to do, and I just said, no, I'm not going to do it. And with that, and I just obviously me trying to go back against him, and I was probably the only person who actually, of a long line of people, I was the first person to do this. A number of kids behind me all chose to do the same thing as me and walk off and not do it afterwards, which I was sort of proud with, and I'm pleased that I wish I would have done. Well, I was pleased I did that. It didn't seem anything like incredibly brave, but I wish I did a lot more than that kind of stuff. I wish I would have just said, what on earth am I studying French for? Why do I need to learn French? Is there any times in my life that I've really required to speak in the French accent? Now, there has been times where I've been to France. We're literally talking of very few times, and to be honest, whenever I was in France, I was with friends who spoke English, and any interactions that I had was really down to money, and money is in units of measure that we can both see and understand. So really didn't have much of a problem. I think I've seen a couple of situations with my parents or something where they tried to get some directions, but in today's modern era, there's maps and everything else, so it really didn't matter anymore and stuff like that. And I remember one school class situation where the teacher did turn around and said, and can anybody think of any good ideas? And she was trying to channel everybody to think in a certain way. Pardon me. God. Didn't mean to burp down the thing for you there. So she was trying to get everybody to channel into a certain kind of way. She goes, anybody can think of anything about France? And I said, what about its history? There's a big history between Britain and France. What about that? And she goes, oh, yeah. Well, obviously she was a language teacher. It wasn't going to go down the route of history. But obviously it's very important in terms of history when it comes to language, because there's... I could butcher this word, etymology, where you look at the language and where words originate from. So, if there was a language I would love to learn, it would probably be Latin. Obviously, it's not spoken that well, but it's obviously used in science and things like that, and how it all originates from different places, and it covers a lot of. Obviously, English is connected with Latin and French as well. And obviously there's certain French words which have been taken over to the English language and vice versa. There's a mixture of all these different things. And if there was a study of etymology, I think I probably really would grasp at that one more so than just learning the end product, which in general a lot of schooling is the end product without looking at the big picture, how things originated from and things like that, which is always... my preference, and taking a view in the perspective of how things began and then drawing back from that point, rather than looking at the top level or looking at the refined machine at the end and then just working out how and then trying to replicate that, which I find is very hard, especially from my side. I'm not trying to my language skills, as you can tell, is probably not that great, probably a little bit better than a few people, but where it comes to trying to learn a new language, Oh my gosh, that is a big struggle. And really, when I was learning things like French, I was just learning from repetition and not really learning from using it in a structured sentence and communication and finding that that was working, and there's some kind of reward mechanism back in return for using that language. I could have been just talking in noughts and zeros, blip, 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 like that, and it would have. I could have sort of probably would have even understood it a little bit better in sort of a Morse code method. Anyway, so this is important. These lessons that I'm just trying to go through, because if you think that you're coming to a certain roadblock in your life and you've been through these little steps in your life before, the question is, where you threw yourself to something and you was a little bit down, you was a little bit depressed about going to this environment that really wasn't for you, there lies the point that you potentially have been through these situations before, unless I'm talking to some 5-year-old kid. There's potential. Sorry about my blue language, but yeah, you shouldn't really be listening to this. It's explicit as well. Yeah, so unless I'm listening, somebody's 5 years old and they're listening to me, it really you probably would have been through these kind of situations before, and upon your reflection, you would have gone to yourself, it's sort of, I wish I would have approached that situation a little bit differently. I wish I would have just kicked some bloody ass. I wish I'd have. There were certain things that I was very certain of, and there was things that were built up based upon my fear. So it would have seemed when I approached this situation that the fear factor was rapid. It was like, holy shit, I'm going to get beaten up on the first day. Holy shit, I better avoid these kids because they're going to think of me in a weird way. Holy shit, there are people who are looking at me. All that kind of stuff. So whenever you throw yourself into a field, the fear is incredible. I guess it's a very natural thing, and it's probably quite useful when you're hunting or you're meeting other tribes, which were probably very dangerous in the past. But the times have changed a little bit, and people aren't going to just throw their fists in the first meeting, unless you're in a very violent pub or something. But yeah, so contemplate the fear that you was having just like the night before, all those kind of situations, and think to yourself, was it really valid, and was it really the correct method of thinking? And it definitely wasn't, I would say, in my respect. I probably had, when I went to the secondary school, which was when I was about 12, I had definitely an elevated level of fear. I was very used to my environment from being in a primary school, and now I've moved up to a secondary school. It was a very daunting sort of factor and fear, and there was just so many little things that I was seeing, which was like, oh my gosh, this is incredibly fearful. And obviously you have to, you try and find friends that you knew from your previous school, and you try and hang around with them a little bit, but then those kids get separated into different classes, so you're all sort of trying to find different people that you can meet up with and stuff like that. But the environment is more so like a prison rather than some kind of conference hall and stuff like that. So I think that's sometimes one of those situations which make a lot of people quite fearful of these situations. Nowadays, I sort of jump into those lovely little situations of like where you go to those training centres or meeting rooms and you meet somebody for the new time. I seem to be one of those bitches that can be very good and approachable in those environments. Even so, I was a petrified school little kid in those situations in the past. So it's funny how those little things change around. I can't quite. I'll try and grasp on at exactly how things may have changed. I probably learned a few little lessons to seeing that my father was very accomplished in being sociable, so that may have been just a little bit of a twister on me and how I was able to convert myself a little bit around. Anyway, so yeah, so going back, we have fear. We have this astronomical amount of fear in which we're approaching this situation, as we do with like going into a job situation, as we do when we meet a person for the first time. there is this heightened level of fear. And okay, let's say if there was fear that was valid. Now, I guess if you are approaching something that was very violent, or is pretty much known to be violent, I guess secondary school was definitely a little bit more of a violent arena. So, and I was fully aware of gangs and things like that which would have emerged, and I had to have my wits very high amongst myself. But I guess even so, gangs don't mind somebody that's fairly confident, as long as they're not really going around saying, I'm the big guy around here now. You guys are nothing. That's probably going to be problematic. However, if I was going around and I was being overtly confident, and I was like, "You all right, lads? How you doing?" and things like that. What you doing tomorrow? All that kind of stuff. I think I probably would have been all right by the kids. Maybe one person may have just sort of seen that I was being a little bit too over myself, but in that respect, if I was approaching a situation where there was a lot of bullies and a lot of gangs and all that kind of stuff, but I was still approaching the situation with a heightened level of confidence, and yet I was still in a very violent situation, I think it would have really, I think my situation would have probably rapidly improved. I probably wouldn't have feared intimidation as much. And there is an important lesson in life as well, where there's studies that have been where people that have entered into school environments where if you are the oldest one in your class, so you've been born at the right end of the age, you're used to all the other class members. Say if you've got a year difference between one kid and another, a year difference is a major difference, like physical growth and intellect and brains, how the brain grows over that year's time is a credible difference. And if you can overcome sort of confidence, and you can continuously learn from how to beat and over accomplish from other kids, then you would have a heightened level of confidence, and you would be able to achieve to a lot higher standards. And hey ho, I was the lowest point of the classroom, so that obviously didn't really help me out too much. But anyway, in terms of my age range, so all right, so running back. So if you now think about these situations of roadblocks, people telling you all these kind of things, you now know that the fear factor probably wasn't required as much. If anything, that fear factor should have been taken on head on. I wish if any of the school teachers, I really wish I was one of those kids that would just say, speak up to the school teacher at times, and I wasn't fearful of the situation that would occur back at me. Now, I guess there was a lot of fear in terms of me being a failure to my parents. I didn't really want to find myself going into detention and stuff like that. But nowadays, if I look back at it, if I felt that I was right, or if my thinking was just and moral, and I stood up to a teacher at certain points in time, and they detained me, I would not feel in any slight shape, way or form feel bad about what had happened. I would feel obviously a bit pissed off that I'd had to stay behind class and rewrite a word about 1,000 times. But beyond that, if I had done something which was good, like say if a teacher was getting a little bit hard on a kid and I said, hey, be easy on him, he's not really like, it's not his fault, and then the school teacher goes, right, you're detained as well, I would feel justified for that kind of situation. But obviously there's the schooling environment is very sort of backed up upon fear and repercussions, and trying to toe the line and trying to study the same thing and really beat out the individualism in you, and to make you more so this everything learning machine which can be applicable to anything rather than the specialized individual empowered machine. So that's schooling anyway. I mean, I think plenty of other people have sort of experienced that level of thing. When I speak to a lot of kids, well, guys and girls right nowadays, I don't think a lot of people have had been to as much of a violent school as what I had been. But I guess this is British schooling for you. Next would be obviously going into a workplace environment, and obviously you're very fearful of people's sort of people's. It's very interesting in a work sense environment. There's always this little personalities and performance and intellect, and really there's not many people. I think I can be one of those people that do learn things as I go along, but there's a lot of people that once they've come out of university or once they've come out of education, they remain static at the level of their comprehension for a long time. There's a certain good few people that can go beyond that point, but a lot of people remain static at their levels of education. And there's all these little things which occur, which happen, which counteract the levels of comprehension that people have. Now, if somebody's been in the office for a long time and they have understanding of all of the systems and things like that, and all of the processes, and you come into the office and they have all of these great skills. Some of them can approach these things according to their personality very well and are very good in how they instruct things, and they're very kind and things like that. But sometimes the power can get to them in the wrong way. If they are highly accomplished in that field, the power will get to them and they cannot manage the power, and they can get quite cross with other people if there is things that are not done in a certain way, and they never really sort of reflect upon themselves and really approach things in their own. Well, they never like self-reflect and think, okay, maybe that was my problem, maybe that was the way that I was training there. Incidentally, hand on heart, I don't think I've ever been negative to anybody especially when I've been training somebody else. I've always been very positive, very jokey, very sort of very sort of like I know you're better than that, don't worry, and things like that, and very motivational in the way that I was always approach things, and really break things down into. There's a certain law in philosophy where you can break things down into the simplest level, and I always try and break things down in a beautifully simple manner that people just always comprehend, and yeah, it always seems to work. But yet you do find these characters that have power in their minds, and then they have the cards, and they don't want to give up certain cards, and then they tell you things in a really weird, constructed manner and misconstrued, and you're like, what the fuck did you just tell me there? But you're just going to sit there and smile back at them because you're sort of like a little bit intimidated by them at the same time, and it's the first couple of days, and you don't really want to start rocking the boat, and obviously this is your employment. You don't want to be kicked out on your ass before you know it. You're on a probation period, all of that kind of jazz. But in retrospect, once you do start to accomplish these things in the office and things like that, and you're like, oh, okay, right, this system wasn't nowhere near as complicated as what I originally thought it was to be. There you do have like, oh, okay, the balance of power is changing now. Now that person either starts to get a little bit nicer to you now and go, haha, yeah, or that person can be just a little bit dogged in their way of thinking and still be like, oh, I know everything still, but and still a little bit protective of their knowledge. But yeah, you go back, and really the way I like to approach things is just sort of when you're learning, especially when you're learning with those kind of people, you just got to just sort of say, look, I'm gonna ask you that same question again. I'm not sure about exactly what you're saying there. Please, can you tell me again? And just really just it doesn't matter too much if they go, oh right, okay, let me tell you this and stuff like that. I don't really give a damn anymore. I just like, okay, yeah, could you tell me that again, and things like that, and it's definitely the best approach. You really will get the information that you require. I wish I did approach things a little bit more confidently in the past. I just had this feeling that everybody knew so much more than everybody than me, and I just thought I would never be able to attain this information, and I just had to make the best that I could. in this situation. But as time goes on, I realised more so and more so it wasn't necessarily about me and my understanding or comprehension, but more so about the learner and the teacher and the way that things were explained to me, because I seemed to not struggle in any way, shape or form relaying this information, but it seemed like the people that were really these highly attainable, intellectual people that were trying to give me all these instructions of how this system worked in this really high level manner and way and all this kind of stuff, I realized that they probably didn't have too much of an idea in the first place, or the way that they were thinking and approaching things were just so weirdly analytical that it just didn't really make any point or purpose, or they just were very crap teachers. But yeah, it's funny how you go to the workplace environments and then you think to yourself, right, it was actually like this. And it does obviously take a little while for the penny to drop to really understand how things go and how things work. But after time, it's not a problem at all. And I've got that approach now to learning in any sense, because now, and I would definitely recommend it for anybody who's listening as well, is that, and this is the Einstein thing, is that really one of the most beautiful things in the world, especially when I'm with my son, is I get him to stand by the window and we look outside at the stars and the moon and we go, whoa, and he repeats after me, whoa, and he's like got this little smile on his face. And it's curiosity. That is one of the golden virtues of life. And and it's one of the things that bloody gets killed by a lot of these things, these roadblocks in our life, where we go, shit, we've got another thing in our life, and we just shut down our brains and never really sort of accomplish anything in terms of how we go. But really, the one thing in the virtue is we should have just kicked in the bravery virtue and really hit home with that. The bravery and honesty virtues are really handy in most situations. When you get thrown into a situation, honesty and bravery are always going to come to your aid when you're in these situations. And the driving push behind honesty and bravery is your curiosity. If you can, if you fire into these situations with those things, you are going to be very battle ready in most problems. And yeah, I think that's really one of the major guiding factors in your life. And whenever you think about those things, those three virtues, you need to kick down the wall with honesty and bravery. And then you just the thing that's pushing it behind it is your curiosity. And I guess that's a driving factor of life. That's the driving factor of you understanding philosophy and really attaining knowledge and really pursuing success and really getting further in your lives, where these roadblocks seem like a big task, but once you're on the other side of the roadblock, you go, this was a total load of bullshit that was thrown at my way. I'm not sure exactly why all this bullshit was thrown my way, but now I've got an understanding and comprehension of things, then I understand how to approach things and tackle things in a different manner. I guess one of the levels of the manner in which approaching raising children is kind of handy and is probably something that I've just mastered and learned a little bit more, is that you're converting yourself over, especially when you have a kid, is where you're being very selfish and you're all about mostly yourself, even though you might be living with a partner and you might have to, like, I don't know, do something for the partner every once in a while and stuff like that. But regardless, most of the time it's all about yourself. But finding a way where you're really moving all the objects of your life and reality around a new person is more so of getting some kind of routine bedded down where you can really work as a team. So it's like a team work, like a struggle between both of you. Not really a struggle, but it's a working mythology that you approach both of you, and you have like these voluntary contracts. If you wipe the arse, I'll take it to the bins, all that kind of stuff. Gets put in a certain mythology of you approaching things. And if you was told more so of the actual the ways of approaching things more so than the actual the problems that were going to be thrown your way. So you were told about the being like I don't know, if industrious or efficient in the way that the methodology of which you was approaching things. If people were talking to you in terms of virtues and how the virtues can help you and guide you in terms of certain situations, like what I'm trying to do here now, it really does improve life struggles for a lot of people. And thereby, I sort of give you information there, which really, if you find other people in that situation, where they're coming to a bit of a crossroads in their life, and they're coming to a situation, you get the book of virtues out, and you say, okay, here we have certain things, and if you're going to get through this part of your life, we need to start talking in honesties. We need to be honest with each other, and we need to really delve into the truth. And it's going to take bravery to get there, and your curiosity, which will, curiosity is more so on a sort of positive and finding things. I guess you go, some of the life lessons of the toughest things in your life, the inner reflection things, is more so just purely honesty and bravery, and curiosity doesn't necessarily is the working driver if sort of very personal reflection things about your childhood and things like that. But these are definite tools which you can keep to yourself, and you can obviously try and provide to other people. It is important stuff that you share, and really you do make a better world when you approach these things. These wise words that you think people are being very wise when they tell you about these roadblocks, they're not really being wise. They're not being like the lovers of wisdom of philosophers itself. They're just really just giving you a little laugh, and it's not really anything of any value and any help. And if anything, it raises the fear, which is not really that sensible in any ways. I know that people who are approaching situations, I try and give them little tokens of truth or things that I went through and how I combated the problems. I try and tell them all the certain problems that I have and solutions that I had to them. I try and work out, or I try and give them like a scattergun approach of how things had happened. But if anything, if I really went back to those conversations, I would have probably just given them, rather than handed to them all the sort of like the instruction manual of dealing with every single situation, and saying if this scenario happens you do this, and if this situation happens you do that. Maybe all of my methodologies might have not been totally correct, but if I gave them the guiding lights and just said, right, you just look up to the stars, and then you can just work out a few things from that point, and then it's really up to you to empower yourself to work out and find your own way through this system and entanglement. Thereby, you get given and granted the greatest gift, and you can provide the greatest gift to other people in which to navigate the problem. And even if they do have this conversation of like, what the fuck, you're talking in virtues? What on earth is a bloody virtue? Or what are you talking about? You turn into some kind of religious gospel preacher already to me. But you can obviously try and explain it in a little bit more of a beautiful sense, not just all going down the route of talking, it's your virtue that will get you there, like some kind of strange, stoic, godlike person. But you can just approach things in just like, yeah, okay, so what we need to be first is honest. Let's just try and be honest. What this thing about this feeling and stuff like that, have you ever been through this situation before, and all this kind of stuff? Really get them to open up their hearts, trying to get them to explain these certain things, and then just say, okay, well, it's going to have to be that thing of bravery now. You're going to have to really try and sort of dig deeper. You're going to have to, tomorrow morning, you're going to have that difficult conversation, which you're going to be like thinking about the next day, or thinking about that night until you approach that conversation. But you're just going to have to do it and see what happens, see where the dust lies, see where the dust settles. And then, that's probably one of the methods. Now, obviously, that's a very strange and fearful situation. But obviously, if you're throwing yourself into a new position or a new place in the world, and really it's just the territory of the unknown, really should be your curiosity that should be driving you. That should be your homing factor in how you would like move and approach things and go, right, okay, we need to I'm really interested in this thing. What is this complex called the school? What is this thing called the workplace? What is the workplace that I'm working for? What is the driver? What is the thing that generates our revenue? What is the major risks? What is the yada yada yada? So you could the curiosity really is a beautiful thing which should be harnessed and should be explored as much as possible. Hopefully, obviously, your curiosity has brought you to me in some way, shape, and form, and I am trying to ignite it a little bit further, trying to just inject a few steroid pumps and really get it as pumped up as possible, and obviously just keeping it as sustained as possible, so that your curiosity and your driver can go as far as it possibly can to take you to different places. So yeah, just as always, try and do a little bit of your own research. Homework is a bloody horrible word. It installs fear into other kids, but your own learning and your own sort of understanding and your comprehension of things is a route to your own happiness. I think there's lots of great quotes from Aristotle about where you're trying to learn something and you accomplish it, and it is a real true value of happiness that gets brought to your life, and it's all fundamentally brought upon the act of curiosity. So, just go wild. Go, just try and learn stuff. Just, it's sometimes hard in itself just to sort of think to yourself and go, what on earth to think about now? Because your life is taken up with so many of these devices and all these channels and everything else to tell you how to think and what to think and everything else. Yet there are people that have written out these books and written out some beautiful stuff that will touch your hearts or your minds or whatever how you'd like to look at it. That will just really. It's like that person has been in that life in the past, and they're really just talking back to you when you go through these books. So, if you can afford it, get yourself a Kindle reader, read some books, because the books are unbelievable. They're obviously the touch of history, which have been stood the test of time. When you obviously read a book, that where we look to things nowadays, a lot of stuff is just really just regurgitated stuff. But where we look at a book, obviously that's a medium and a channel that has been happening throughout history. And if you do have a connection with that person who's written out that book in that time, then you know that there's something that is connected throughout time, which is timeless, which seems to hit from between that person in that time to you now to this day. And obviously that's why maybe some of the pointers in the Bible is still reflective to this day, because there's probably certain elements of truth and virtue and things like that which have been carried on to this day. Not to say that I'm a full proponent and saying that Jesus is our savior and all that kind of stuff, but it's just that there's connections which occur when you're learning, that the penny drops and you read something that somebody has written in the past and you go, my gosh, that is an incredible thing, and this person is really connecting with me. And he's obviously, he didn't have iPads, or she didn't have iPads, and the root of all this information in the past, they had to go down to a library and get this information. So definitely tap out this curiosity bug. Where you just do a Google search, maybe it's just a little bit tricky, but if you look at books that have been well studied, got really good sources, these people have had to really find good intellectual sort of educated sources to write these books. Just try and start going through them. It's unbelievable, fascinating stuff that you can find, and every single little thing that you pick up throughout time is an extra connection in that brain, and that brain starts to really work like an incredible beast as soon as the curiosity bug or the curiosity virus works, and it really takes over your mind until you become this all-wise, all-knowing being. Not to say that you'll be not just the god, but the god of philosophy. But yeah, it's keep it going, keep driving yourself. It is an incredible thing, and just apply things with reason and truth and evidence and empiricism. or you might start going into a little bit of a world of mysticism, just as a little bit of a fair warning beforehand. So there you go, roadblocks. There is really no roads. You can get yourself a DeLorean and fly straight above it. So thank you very much for your time, and I'll be back very shortly if you're going to move on to the next episode. Anyway, thank you very much for your time, and goodbye.